The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside Carlin, Nevada, throwing Grace Vaughn against the worn leather seat hard enough to bruise her ribs, and she knew before the door even opened that her carefully constructed world was about to crumble into dust. "End of the line, Miss Vaughn." The driver's voice carried no warmth, only the professional courtesy of a man who had seen too many desperate souls pass through his coach. Grace gathered her single carpetbag, smoothing down the faded green traveling dress that had once been her finest, but now bore the stains and wrinkles of 3 weeks on the road. She stepped down into the harsh September sunlight of 1876, squinting against the glare that bounced off the dusty Main Street. Carlin was smaller than she had imagined. Just a handful of wooden buildings clustered along the newly completed Transcontinental Railroad. The town had sprung up to serve the railroad workers and the ranchers who grazed their cattle on the high desert rangeland. But it was still raw and new, lacking the polish of the eastern cities she had left behind. Grace stood on the wooden sidewalk, feeling utterly alone as the stagecoach pulled away, leaving her in a cloud of dust and regret. She had come here following a promise, a letter from Thomas Whitmore, the man who had courted her in San Francisco with sweet words and sweeter lies. He had painted a picture of prosperity, of a merchant business waiting for him in Nevada, of a home ready for a wife. She had believed every word because she had wanted to believe, because at 22, she had thought her chances for marriage were slipping away, because her family had died in the scarlet fever epidemic, and she had nothing left to tie her to California. The telegram had reached her just before she boarded the final stage. Thomas Whitmore had married another woman 2 weeks prior, a wealthier woman, a woman whose father owned the general store Thomas now managed. Grace's life savings, sent ahead to help establish their household, had vanished into his pockets and his new bride's trousseau. "I have been used," she whispered to herself, the words bitter on her tongue. The realization settled into her bones like winter cold. Used and discarded like yesterday's newspaper, she walked slowly down the street, her boots clicking on the wooden planks. She had $17 to her name, no prospects, no family, and nowhere to go. The weight of it pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. A saloon door swung open nearby, releasing a wave of piano music and male laughter. 2 cowboys stumbled out, their eyes settling on her with interest that made her skin crawl. "Well now, what do we have here?" the taller one said, his words slurred with whiskey. "You look lost, sweetheart." Grace quickened her pace, clutching her bag tighter. She had heard stories about what happened to women alone in these frontier towns. Her heart hammered as she heard their boots following her. "We are talking to you," the second man called out. "Not polite to ignore folks trying to be friendly." She turned a corner, hoping to find safety in the marshal's office or a church, anywhere with respectable people. Instead, she found herself in a narrow alley between the telegraph office and a feed store. The 2 men rounded the corner behind her, blocking her exit. "Now, why are you running?" The tall one grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "We just want to get to know you. Please leave me alone." Grace's voice came out smaller than she intended. She backed against the wooden wall, feeling splinters catch at her dress. "Come on now, a woman alone in Carlin carrying one little bag. You must be looking for work. We can help with that." He reached for her arm. Grace swung her carpetbag at his head, connecting with a satisfying thud. The man staggered back, cursing, and his companion lunged forward with an angry snarl. She opened her mouth to scream, but before any sound emerged, a new voice cut through the tension like a blade. The lady said, "Leave her alone." All 3 of them turned. A man stood at the alley entrance, tall and broad-shouldered, silhouetted against the bright street beyond. He wore dusty work clothes, a dark shirt and canvas pants tucked into well-worn boots, and a wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face. But Grace could see his eyes, and they were hard as flint. "This is not your business, Quinn," the tall cowboy said, but his bravado had deflated considerably. "I am making it my business, Davies. You and your friend need to head back to the Silver Spur and sleep off that whiskey." "We did not mean nothing," the second man mumbled, already edging toward the street. "Just being friendly. Your kind of friendly is not wanted here. Move along." The two men left, muttering under their breath but not willing to challenge the newcomer. Grace sagged against the wall, her legs suddenly weak with relief and delayed fear. The man approached slowly, removing his hat to reveal dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, and a weathered face that spoke of years under the Nevada sun. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with strong features and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Are you all right, miss?" His voice was gentler now, concerned. "Yes, thank you. I am grateful for your intervention." Grace tried to compose herself, smoothing her hair back with trembling hands. "You look like you have been traveling hard. Are you meeting someone in Carlin?" The question, innocent as it was, broke something inside her. To her horror, tears began streaming down her face, hot and unstoppable. She turned away, humiliated by this display in front of a stranger, but unable to stem the tide of grief and exhaustion and fear that overwhelmed her. "I am sorry," she managed to gasp. "I am so sorry. I do not usually fall apart like this. No need to apologize." He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. "Sometimes the world gives us more than we can carry alone." Grace accepted the handkerchief, pressing it to her eyes. The fabric smelled like sage and clean cotton. She took several deep breaths, trying to regain her composure. When she finally looked up at him, his expression held only patience and kindness, no judgment or pity. "I came here to marry a man who turned out to be already married," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "He took my money, and I have nowhere to go, and I do not even know why I am telling you this. Because sometimes it helps to say the truth out loud." He studied her for a moment, then made a decision. "My name is Nathan Quinn. I own a ranch about 5 miles east of town. I could use help with my household if you are interested in honest work." Grace's first instinct was suspicion. She had just learned the hard way about trusting men who made promises. "Why would you offer employment to a complete stranger?" Fair question. Nathan put his hat back on, adjusting the brim. "I lost my housekeeper 3 months ago when she moved to Virginia City to live with her daughter. Since then, my house has become a disaster, and I have been eating burned beans and overdone steak. I can handle ranch work just fine, but keeping a proper household is beyond me. You would have your own room, respectable wages, and I give you my word you would be safe. I have 3 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, all good men who know how to behave properly. You do not know anything about me. I could be a terrible cook. Can you be worse than me?" Despite everything, Grace felt a small smile tug at her lips. "I am actually quite a good cook, and I know how to manage a household. My mother trained me well before she passed." "Then you are overqualified for the position." Nathan's expression was serious again. "Look, I understand if you do not trust me. You can check my references in town. Talk to Marshal Henderson or Reverend Phillips. They have known me for 10 years since I first settled here. I am offering you a job, nothing more, nothing less. You would be an employee with all the respect that entails." Grace considered her options. She could use her remaining money to take the next stage out of Carlin, but to where? She had no destination, no plan. Or she could take a chance on this rancher who had helped her when she needed it most. She looked into Nathan Quinn's face, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but found only honest directness. "I would like to speak with the marshal, if that is acceptable." "Of course. I will walk you to his office." They made their way back to the main street, walking side by side. Grace noticed how other townspeople greeted Nathan with friendly waves and respectful nods. Whatever his reputation in Carlin, it seemed to be a good one. Marshal Henderson turned out to be a gray-haired man in his 50s with a lined face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened to Grace's question about Nathan Quinn's character and let out a dry chuckle. "Nathan Quinn is one of the most honest men I know," he said. "Works harder than 3 men combined, treats his employees fair, pays his debts, and minds his own business unless someone needs help. If he has offered you a position, you can trust his word. He has been alone out at that ranch since his wife died, and it has been hard on him." Grace felt a pang of sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss," she said to Nathan. "I did not know." "It was 7 years ago," Nathan replied quietly. "Childbirth took her and the baby both. I buried them on the ranch under the cottonwoods." The rawness in his voice told Grace that 7 years had not been enough to fully heal that wound. She understood grief, how it lingered and reshaped you. "I will take the position," she said. "Thank you for the opportunity." Nathan nodded, a flash of relief crossing his face. "I will get my wagon. We can head out to the ranch before dark." The journey to the Quinn Ranch took them through high desert country, sagebrush rolling away to distant mountains that turned purple in the afternoon light. Nathan drove the wagon with easy competence, pointing out landmarks and explaining the layout of his property. He ran cattle primarily, about 300 head on 2,000 acres, with help from his 3 ranch hands. An older man named Pete who had been with him from the start, and 2 younger cowboys, Jim and Robert. The ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was larger than Grace had expected, a solid 2-story structure built from local stone and timber, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Behind it stood the barn, bunkhouse, and several outbuildings. Cottonwood trees lined a creek that ran along the property's northern edge, their leaves already touched with gold from the approaching autumn. "It is beautiful," Grace said, and meant it. There was something peaceful about this place, something that settled the constant anxiety that had plagued her since leaving San Francisco. "My wife and I built it together," Nathan said. "Well, I did the building, but Catherine designed it. She wanted a real home, not just a shelter. Room enough for the family she hoped we would have." He pulled the wagon up to the house and helped Grace down. The front door was unlocked, opening into a large main room that served as both parlor and dining area. Grace could see immediately what Nathan had meant about needing help. Dust covered every surface, dirty dishes were piled in the kitchen area, and the whole place had the neglected air of a space where someone slept and ate but did not truly live. "I know it is a mess," Nathan said, looking embarrassed. "I was not exaggerating about my housekeeping skills." "It has good bones," Grace said diplomatically. "Once I get it cleaned up properly, it will be lovely." Nathan showed her to her room on the 2nd floor, a small but comfortable space with a window overlooking the creek. The furniture was simple but well made. A bed with a real mattress, a dresser, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and even a small desk and chair under the window. "This was going to be a nursery," Nathan said from the doorway, "but you can make it whatever you need it to be. The bedroom at the end of the hall is mine. There is another spare room for storage and such. Outhouse is behind the kitchen, though I have been thinking about putting in one of those indoor water closets I have heard about." "This is more than adequate," Grace said. "Thank you. I will leave you to settle in. Supper is usually at 6, but do not feel obligated to cook tonight. You have had a long journey." "I would prefer to cook," Grace said. "It will help me feel useful." Nathan smiled, the expression transforming his face and making him look younger. "Then I will not argue. The kitchen is yours to command." He left her alone, and Grace sat on the bed, testing the mattress. It was firm and comfortable, better than any bed she had slept in since leaving San Francisco. She unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 dresses in the small closet and arranging her brush, mirror, and other personal items on the dresser. When she looked around the room, properly inhabited now, it felt like the first place that had been truly hers in a very long time. Downstairs, she tackled the kitchen first, heating water and washing the accumulated dishes. She found the pantry surprisingly well stocked with basics: flour, cornmeal, beans, salt pork, dried beef, coffee, sugar, and even some canned goods. There was a root cellar too, with potatoes, onions, and carrots. With these supplies, she could make a decent meal. Grace decided on a simple but hearty supper: fried steaks, pan-fried potatoes, biscuits, and gravy. As she worked, her hands moving through familiar tasks, she felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Cooking had always been a comfort, a way to create order and nourishment from raw ingredients. Her mother had taught her that a well-made meal was an act of love, and though she was cooking for an employer rather than family, she put care into every step. She was just pulling the biscuits from the oven when Nathan returned, having washed up at the pump outside. He stopped in the doorway, inhaling deeply. "That smells incredible," he said. "I cannot remember the last time this house smelled like a real home." Grace set the table, using the good dishes she found in the hutch, and they sat down to eat together. At first, the meal was quiet, both of them focused on the food. Then Nathan began asking her questions, gentle and non-invasive, about her life before Carlin. Grace found herself talking more freely than she had expected, telling him about growing up in San Francisco, her parents' deaths, her doomed engagement to Thomas Whitmore. "I should have known better," she said, cutting into her steak. "My father always said I was too trusting, that I saw the best in people even when they showed me their worst. But Thomas seemed so genuine, so kind. He wrote me letters for 6 months, beautiful letters full of poetry and plans for our future. How could all of that have been a lie?" "Some people are skilled liars," Nathan said. "That is not a reflection on you, that is on him. I sent him nearly all my savings, $200, thinking it would help us start our life together. I feel like such a fool. You were hopeful and generous. Those are not character flaws." Nathan's voice was firm. "What he did was theft and betrayal. You have a right to be angry." "I am angry," Grace admitted. "But more than that, I feel used, like I was just a means to an end, a temporary source of money and attention until something better came along. It makes me question everything about myself. Was I not pretty enough, not interesting enough? What was wrong with me that he could discard me so easily?" "Nothing is wrong with you." Nathan set down his fork, looking at her directly. "I have known you for all of 3 hours, and I can already see that you are intelligent, capable, and kind. Any man who would treat you the way Thomas Whitmore did is a fool who does not deserve a moment of your time or thought." The conviction in his words made Grace's throat tight. "Thank you for saying that. I am not just saying it, I mean it." Nathan picked up his coffee cup, then set it down again. "After Catherine died, I thought I would never recover. The grief was so heavy I could barely get out of bed some mornings. But what made it worse was the guilt, the feeling that I had somehow failed her. I kept thinking if I had gotten the doctor sooner, if we had gone to Virginia City for the birth, if I had done 1,000 things differently, maybe she would have lived." It took me years to understand that sometimes terrible things happen, and it is not anyone's fault. It just is. You cannot carry blame for another person's choices. How did you move forward? Work, mostly. I threw myself into the ranch, into building something that would last. And slowly, day by day, the weight got lighter. I will never forget Catherine, and I will always love the life we were starting to build together. But I also learned that I could survive the unsurvivable. You will too. They finished the meal in companionable silence. Grace cleared the dishes and Nathan helped her wash them, despite her protests that it was her job. "We are the only two people here right now," he said. "No reason we cannot help each other." Over the following days, Grace settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She woke early before dawn to start the stove and make breakfast for Nathan and the ranch hands who came up from the bunkhouse to eat. Pete turned out to be a grizzled man in his 60s with a face like weathered leather and a surprisingly gentle manner. Jim and Robert were both in their 20s, respectful and hardworking, treating Grace with the courtesy Nathan had promised. After breakfast, while the men went out to work with the cattle, Grace tackled the house room by room. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, beat rugs, and polished furniture until the whole place gleamed. She found Catherine's touch everywhere, in the careful placement of windows to catch the morning light, in the built-in shelves designed for books and treasures, in the wide fireplace perfect for gathering around on cold winter evenings. She also found Catherine's things still packed away in trunks in the spare room: dresses, books, needlework, letters from family back east. Grace asked Nathan about them one evening after supper. "I could not bring myself to go through them," he admitted. "It felt like erasing her somehow." "Would you like help? Not to erase her, but to honor her memory properly. Some of these things might be better displayed than hidden away." Nathan considered this. "Yes, I think I would like that." They spent that evening going through Catherine's belongings together. Nathan told stories about his wife as they worked, how she had insisted on bringing her entire library across the country, how she had never quite mastered horseback riding but tried valiantly anyway, how she could make him laugh even on the hardest days. Grace listened, asking questions, helping him remember the woman he had loved. "She would have liked you," Nathan said, carefully folding one of Catherine's shawls. "You have the same kind of determination she had, that refusal to let circumstances defeat you." "I hope I can live up to that," Grace said softly. They decided to keep some items out. Catherine's books on the shelves, her favorite quilt folded over the back of the parlor sofa, a framed photograph of her and Nathan on their wedding day displayed on the mantel. The rest they packed carefully in a cedar chest, preserved but not forgotten. As weeks passed, Grace found herself looking forward to the evenings most of all. After the work was done and supper was finished, she and Nathan would sit on the porch or by the fire, depending on the weather, and talk for hours. They discussed everything: books they had read, places they had seen, dreams for the future, fears about the present. Nathan told her about his childhood in Missouri, about coming west after the war, about the back-breaking work of building the ranch from nothing. Grace shared her memories of San Francisco, the good times before the fever took her family, the loneliness that had made Thomas Whitmore's attention so seductive. "I think I was more in love with the idea of being loved than with Thomas himself," she confessed one October evening. The air had turned crisp, and they sat by the fireplace with coffee and the apple pie she had made that afternoon. "I wanted so desperately to belong somewhere again, to have family and purpose. He offered me that, or seemed to, and I grabbed onto it without looking too closely." "That is understandable," Nathan said. "We all want to belong. Do you ever get lonely out here?" "Sometimes. The ranch keeps me busy and Pete and the boys are good company. But yes, there are times when the silence gets heavy. Times when I miss having someone to share things with, the small moments that make up a life. Grace looked at him across the fireplace, at his strong profile gilded by the flames, and felt something shift in her chest. Over the past month, Nathan Quinn had become more than an employer. He had become a friend, perhaps the best friend she had ever had. He listened when she spoke, remembered the things she cared about, made her laugh with his dry observations about the world. He was unfailingly kind but never condescending, respected her opinions even when he disagreed, and trusted her completely with the running of his household. She had also come to notice other things about him. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The competence of his hands, whether he was working with a horse or fixing a loose hinge. The sound of his voice when he sang while doing chores, old songs from his childhood. The way he always made sure she had what she needed before thinking of himself. Grace caught herself looking for him during the day, listening for his footsteps, finding excuses to be where he was. And sometimes, she caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and wondering that made her pulse quicken. But she was afraid to hope, afraid to trust her own judgment after the disaster with Thomas. What if she was misreading friendship for something more? What if Nathan still belonged heart and soul to his late wife? What if Grace was just another foolish woman seeing what she wanted to see instead of what was really there? The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that turned the ranch into a wonderland of white and gold. Grace stood on the porch, wrapped in a wool shawl, watching the sun rise over the transformed landscape. Nathan came up behind her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Beautiful, is it not?" he said, offering her a cup. "Magnificent. I have never seen anything like it." "Wait until we get a real storm, then you will see something impressive." He sipped his coffee, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cold air. "Grace, I need to tell you something," her heart stuttered. "What is it?" "When I hired you, I truly did just need a housekeeper. That was my only intention. But over these past 2 months, you have become so much more than an employee. You have brought life back into this house, into my days. I find myself thinking about you when I am out working, wondering what you are doing, looking forward to supper not because of the food but because I get to sit across from you and talk. I am making a mess of this, but what I am trying to say is that my feelings have changed, deepened. And I needed you to know, even if it makes things complicated." Grace's hands trembled, making the coffee ripple in her cup. "Your feelings have changed how?" Nathan set down his cup and turned to face her fully. His eyes were serious, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. "I am falling in love with you, Grace. Maybe I already have fallen. I know it is too soon. I know you came here to escape one romantic disaster and probably do not want to walk into another. But I could not keep pretending anymore. You deserve honesty." "Nathan." Grace set her own cup down carefully, afraid she would drop it. "I thought I was imagining things. I thought after Thomas I could not trust my own feelings anymore. But every day I wake up happy because I get to see you. Every evening I find reasons to stretch out our conversations because I am not ready for the day to end. When you are gone, the house feels empty even though I have plenty to do. I did not think I could feel this way again, and certainly not so soon. But what I feel for you is nothing like what I felt for Thomas. This is real and solid and terrifying." "Terrifying." Nathan took a step closer. "Because I could actually lose it. With Thomas, I think some part of me always knew it was too good to be true. But you, us, it feels possible. And that makes it scary because it matters so much more." Nathan reached out slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she stayed still, he cupped her face gently with his calloused hand. "You have been used," he said, echoing the words she had whispered that first day in Carlin. "But if you will let me, I promise you, from now on you will be cherished. Not as a housekeeper or an employee, but as the woman I love. As my equal and my partner, if you will have me." Tears pricked Grace's eyes, but they were good tears this time, tears of relief and joy and hope. "Now you will be cherished," she repeated, testing the words. They settled into her heart like a promise written in stone. "I want that, Nathan. I want us." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, with snowflakes drifting down around them and the mountains bearing witness. Grace leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his solid warmth, and felt like she had finally come home. They took their time after that, building their relationship deliberately and carefully. Nathan courted Grace properly, despite the fact that she lived under his roof. He brought her wildflowers from the range and small gifts from town. He taught her to ride horseback, patient with her nervousness and celebrating her progress. They took long walks along the creek, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and dreams and fears. In December, Nathan took Grace to town for the Christmas social at the church. It was her first real introduction to Carlin society, and she was nervous about how people would perceive her situation at the ranch. But Nathan introduced her proudly as the woman he intended to marry, assuming she would have him, and the townspeople welcomed her warmly. Reverend Phillips congratulated them both, and several ranch wives pulled Grace aside to tell her how happy they were to see Nathan smiling again. "He has been alone too long," Mrs. Henderson, the marshal's wife, said. "You are good for him. Anyone can see that." On Christmas Eve, after they returned from the social, Nathan built up the fire in the parlor and asked Grace to sit with him. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "I have something for you," he finally said. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have it." He pulled out a small wooden box, handmade from beautiful polished wood. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a gold ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "It was my grandmother's," Nathan said. "The only thing of value my family owned. My mother gave it to me before I went to war, told me to save it for the woman I would marry. I gave it to Catherine, and after she died, I put it away. I never thought I would have reason to take it out again, but you have changed everything, Grace. You have shown me that love does not come just once in a lifetime. That hearts can heal and grow and make room for new joy without diminishing the old. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love for whatever time we are given?" Grace looked at the ring, glowing warm in the firelight, and thought about the long, strange journey that had brought her to this moment. The grief and loss, the betrayal and fear, the desperate arrival in a dusty Nevada town with nothing but a carpetbag and crushed dreams. And then Nathan, appearing like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. Nathan, who had offered her safety and work, and then, slowly, carefully, his heart. "Yes," she said, the word coming out clear and strong. "Yes, I will marry you." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. He kissed her deeply, his hands tangling in her hair, and Grace felt the last of her fear and doubt dissolve. This was right. This was real. This was the life she was meant to have. They married in January 1877, in the same church where they had attended the Christmas social. Grace wore a new dress she had sewn herself, deep blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes, and carried a simple bouquet of evergreen branches tied with white ribbon. Nathan wore his Sunday best, his hair neatly trimmed, looking happier than anyone had seen him in 7 years. Pete stood up as his best man, and Mrs. Henderson served as Grace's matron of honor. Half the town turned out for the ceremony, crowding into the small church to witness the union. Reverend Phillips spoke about second chances and the grace of new beginnings. God does not always give us what we expect, he said. Sometimes he gives us what we need instead, and it is better than anything we could have imagined. Grace repeated her vows with a full heart, promising to love and honor Nathan Quinn for all her days. When Nathan spoke his own vows, his voice was rough with emotion, and she saw tears in his eyes. "I promise to cherish you," he said. The word weighted with all the meaning they had given it. "To honor you as my equal, to support your dreams as you support mine, to build a life together based on trust and respect and love. You came to me when you needed shelter, and you gave me back my life. I will spend my remaining years trying to be worthy of that gift." They sealed their promises with a kiss, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception held in the town hall, there was dancing and music and a feast to which everyone contributed. Grace danced with Nathan, with Pete, with Marshall Henderson, with half the ranchers in the county. She laughed until her sides hurt, ate cake until she was full, and felt embraced by a community that had become her new family. As the sun set, Nathan and Grace rode back to the ranch in the wagon, bundled against the cold under heavy blankets. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any artificial light, and the snow-covered landscape glowed silver in the starlight. "Happy?" Nathan asked, his arm around her shoulders. "More than I ever thought possible," Grace said, snuggling closer. "I keep thinking about that day in Carlin, how lost and broken I felt. I could not see past the next hour, could not imagine ever feeling whole again. And now look at me. Look at us." "You were always whole," Nathan said. "You just needed time to remember it." Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, a tentative exploration that grew into passionate certainty. Nathan was patient and attentive, concerned with Grace's comfort and pleasure as much as his own. Afterward, they lay wrapped together in the darkness, listening to the wind whistle around the eaves. "I love you," Grace whispered. "I do not think I understood what love really was until I met you. It is not the desperate clinging I felt with Thomas. It is this deep, steady certainty that I am exactly where I belong." "I love you too," Nathan said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher with a messy house and a broken heart. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. For treating me with respect when I felt worthless. For teaching me what it means to be truly cherished." The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Grace settled fully into her role as Nathan's wife, managing the household and ranch finances with capable efficiency. She also began to make her mark on the property, planning a kitchen garden for spring and talking about adding chickens and maybe a milk cow. Nathan supported all her ideas, valuing her input on ranch decisions and making her feel like the true partner he had promised she would be. In February, Pete announced his retirement. His joints ached too much for ranch work, he said, and his daughter in Sacramento had been begging him to come live with her. Nathan threw him a farewell party, inviting everyone who had ever worked with the old cowboy. It was a bittersweet evening, celebrating Pete's long service while saying goodbye to a friend. "Take care of each other," Pete told Nathan and Grace as he prepared to leave. "You have got something special here. Do not take it for granted." "We will not," Grace promised, hugging him tightly. "Thank you for everything." With Pete gone, Nathan hired a new hand, a young man named Daniel who was eager to learn ranching. Jim and Robert stepped up as well, taking on more responsibility and proving themselves capable leaders. Grace made sure all the ranch hands knew they were valued, cooking special meals on their birthdays and making sure they had warm clothes and proper medical care when needed. In spring, as Grace was planting her garden, she realized she had missed her monthly courses twice. At first, she thought it was stress or change of diet, but when her breasts grew tender and she began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew. She was carrying Nathan's child. She told him one evening in April as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. She had been nervous about his reaction, unsure how he would feel about becoming a father again after losing his first child so tragically. "Nathan, I need to tell you something." He looked at her, immediately attentive to the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "I am with child. I am fairly certain, though I have not seen a doctor yet." For a long moment, Nathan just stared at her. Then his face crumpled and he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt his shoulders shake and realized he was crying. "Are you all right?" she asked, worried. "I know this brings up painful memories." "I am happy," Nathan said, his voice thick. "I am so happy, Grace. I thought I would never have this chance again, but I am also terrified. I cannot lose you. I cannot go through that again." "You will not lose me," Grace said firmly. "I am healthy and strong, and we will get the best care available. We will go to Virginia City for the birth if needed, bring in an experienced doctor. We will do everything right. Promise me you will not take any chances. If something feels wrong, we get help immediately." "I promise." Nathan kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees and pressed his face against her still flat stomach. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father and I love you already. You and your mother are my whole world." Grace ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man who felt everything so deeply. "We are going to be fine," she said. "All three of us." True to his word, Nathan took every precaution. He brought in a doctor from Virginia City to examine Grace and stayed in close contact throughout her pregnancy. He insisted she rest when she felt tired, hired a local woman to help with the heavier housework, and monitored her health like a hawk. Grace found his protectiveness both sweet and occasionally frustrating, but she understood its source and tried to be patient. As her belly grew through the summer and fall, Nathan would sit with her every evening, his hand on her stomach, feeling the baby move and kick. They talked about names, about hopes for their child's future, about the life they were building together. "Boy or girl, it does not matter," Nathan said. "I just want them healthy and happy." "I hope they have your kindness," Grace said, "and your strong work ethic." "I hope they have your courage," Nathan replied. "The way you faced down your fear and started over in a strange place. That takes real strength." In late November, Grace's pain started. Nathan immediately sent for the doctor in Virginia City and prepared to ride for help if needed. But the birth, while long and difficult, progressed normally. Grace labored through the night with Nathan at her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. As dawn broke on November 28th, Grace gave one final push, and their son entered the world, screaming his displeasure at being evicted from his warm, comfortable home. The doctor cleaned him up and placed him in Grace's arms, a perfect little person with a shock of dark hair and his father's nose. "He is beautiful," Grace breathed, tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, look at him." Nathan was crying too, openly and unashamedly, as he looked at his wife and son. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for this gift. Thank you for being strong enough to bring him safely into the world." They named him Samuel Nathan Quinn, after Nathan's father and himself. Sam was a healthy baby with good lungs and a vigorous appetite. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with his son when he fussed, changing nappies without complaint, singing the old songs his own father had sung to him. Grace recovered quickly from the birth, and by Christmas, she was back on her feet, managing the household with Sam tied to her chest, in a sling her mother-in-law had sent from Missouri. The ranch hands doted on the baby, each of them taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to earn his gummy smiles. "He is going to be spoiled rotten," Grace told Nathan, watching Robert bounce Sam gently while Jim made silly noises. "A child cannot have too much love," Nathan said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Look at what we have built, Grace. A year and a half ago, you stepped off a stage in Carlin with nothing but a carpetbag and a broken heart. Now look at us. A family, a home, a future." Grace leaned back against him, watching their son and feeling complete in a way she had never imagined possible. "I used to think Thomas Whitmore ruined my life," she said. "But now I understand he just pushed me toward the life I was always meant to have. If he had married me, I would never have come to Carlin. I would never have met you." "Then I suppose I should thank him," Nathan said. "Though I would still like to punch him for hurting you," Grace laughed. "My fierce protector, always." Time passed in the way it does when life is full and happy, days blending into weeks, into months, into years. Sam grew from a baby to a toddler, then a little boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about horses and cattle and the land. Grace and Nathan added to their family, welcoming daughter Mary in 1879 and another son, William, in 1881. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Grace's careful handling of finances and Nathan's expertise with cattle made them one of the more successful operations in the area. They added more land, built a new barn, and improved the house with indoor plumbing and other modern conveniences as they became available. But more than the material success, it was the daily moments of love and connection that defined their life together. Morning coffee on the porch before the children woke. Stolen kisses in the barn. The weight of Nathan's hand on the small of Grace's back as they walked to church on Sundays. The sound of their children's laughter filling the house that had once been so silent. Grace never forgot where she had come from, the pain and betrayal that had brought her to Nevada. But she no longer carried it as a wound. Instead, it became part of her story, the difficult chapter that led to all the good ones that followed. She had been used, yes, but she had also been found. She had been broken, but she had healed stronger than before. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January 1887, Nathan surprised Grace with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with Mrs. Henderson and took the train west, retracing the journey Grace had made alone and desperate a decade earlier. San Francisco had changed in the intervening years, grown larger and more prosperous. Grace showed Nathan the places from her childhood, the house where she had grown up, the church where her family had worshipped. They visited her parents' graves, and Grace introduced Nathan to the people who had shaped her life before Nevada. On their last evening in the city, as they walked along the waterfront watching the sun set over the Pacific, Nathan took Grace's hand. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Leaving the city, the life you might have had here?" Grace looked at him, at the man who had kept every promise he had ever made to her, who had shown her what love really meant, who had given her a life richer than any she could have imagined. "Not for a single moment," she said. "Everything I want, everything I need is in Nevada with you. This place is part of my past, and I am glad I could share it with you, but my heart is in Carlin, in our ranch, in our family. That is home." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her as the fog rolled in from the bay. "You are home to me," he said. "Wherever you are, that is where I belong." They returned to Nevada filled with renewed appreciation for the life they had built. The children had grown in their absence. Sam, now 10 and already a skilled horseman. Mary, 8 and showing signs of her mother's organizational skills. William, 6 and curious about everything. As the years continued to pass, the Quinn Ranch became a fixture in Carlin's landscape, known for fair dealing and quality cattle. Nathan trained Sam in ranch management, teaching him everything about the business while Grace made sure all three children received good educations, bringing in a tutor when the local school proved inadequate. Mary turned out to have a gift for numbers and helped Grace with the ranch accounts from a young age. William was the dreamer of the family, always building things and inventing new solutions to old problems. Grace and Nathan encouraged all of their children's interests, giving them the freedom to become who they were meant to be. In 1892, when Grace was 38 and Nathan 49, they welcomed a surprise fourth child, a daughter they named Catherine after Nathan's first wife. Grace had wondered if the name would be too painful for Nathan, but he insisted on it. Catherine would have wanted this, he said, holding his newborn daughter. She would have loved you, loved our children, loved the family we have become. Naming this little one after her honors her memory and includes her in our joy. Young Catherine, called Katie by everyone, grew up adored by her older siblings and parents alike. She had her mother's determination and her father's gentle nature, a combination that served her well. The older children eventually began making their own paths. Sam married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring county and took over more of the daily ranch operations. Mary surprised everyone by expressing interest in becoming a teacher, pursuing education at a school in Carson City. William announced plans to study engineering, wanting to help bring modern innovations to Nevada. Through it all, Grace and Nathan remained the solid center of their family, their love deepening with each passing year. They had weathered hard winters and dry summers, cattle diseases and economic downturns, the normal struggles of raising children and running a ranch. But they had faced it all together, drawing strength from their partnership. On a crisp October morning in 1895, Grace was working in the kitchen when Nathan came in from the barn. He was 62 now, his hair fully silver, his face weathered from decades under the Nevada sun. But to Grace, he was as handsome as the day she had met him, maybe more so because of all the years and love between them. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. "I want to show you something." Grace wiped her hands on her apron and followed him outside. He led her to the grove of cottonwoods where Catherine and the baby were buried. Over the years, the graves had been lovingly tended, surrounded by flowers Grace had planted and a white fence Nathan had built. "I come here sometimes," Nathan said, "to talk to her. To tell her about our life, our children, our happiness. I want her to know that I did not forget her, but I also did not let grief destroy me. I found love again, built a family again, lived a full life, and I think she would be glad of that." "I am sure she would be," Grace said softly. "From everything you have told me about her, she was too kind to want you to suffer alone forever." Nathan turned to face Grace, taking both her hands in his. "When I met you in that alley in Carlin, I saw a woman who had been knocked down by life but refused to stay down. I saw strength and courage and hope, even in the midst of despair. I knew I wanted to help you, but I had no idea you would end up saving me too." "We saved each other," Grace said. "You gave me a chance when I had nothing. You showed me I was worth more than Thomas Whitmore's lies. You taught me what it means to be truly loved, not as a possession but as a person. And you brought me back to life," Nathan said. "You filled my empty house with laughter and love. You gave me children and partnership and joy. Every single day for the past 18 years, I have thanked God for that moment in the alley, for the chance to offer you a job and have you accept it." "Now you will be cherished," Grace quoted softly. "That is what you promised me, and you have kept that promise every single day. As you have cherished me." Nathan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I love you, Grace Quinn. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. You are my heart, my partner, my home." Grace kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the contact. Around them, the cottonwood leaves rustled in the breeze, golden and beautiful, falling like blessings on the earth below. They stood there together for a long time, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of meaning and purpose from the ashes of loss and betrayal. The ranch stretched around them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to their hard work and dedication. Their children were growing into good people, ready to make their own marks on the world, and Grace and Nathan had each other, a love that had been tested and proven true. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Grace thought about the terrified young woman who had stepped off the stage in Carlin with nothing but a carpetbag and broken dreams. That woman could never have imagined the richness of the life that awaited her, the love and family and home she would find in the high desert of Nevada. She had whispered that she had been used, and it was true. Thomas Whitmore had used her badly, taken her money and her trust, and discarded her without a second thought. But that betrayal had led her to Nathan Quinn, who had shown her what it truly meant to be cherished. He had kept his promise for 18 years and counting, treating her with love and respect, valuing her as his equal, building a partnership based on mutual trust and genuine affection. And in cherishing her, he had allowed her to cherish him back, to help heal his old wounds, to give him the family he thought he had lost forever. Their love had created new life, new hope, new possibilities. It had transformed a lonely ranch house into a home filled with joy and laughter. It had proven that second chances were real, that hearts could heal, that love could bloom even in the hardest soil. As the years continued to pass, Grace and Nathan aged gracefully together, their love remaining constant even as their bodies slowed and their hair turned white. They watched their children marry and start families of their own, welcoming grandchildren with the same joy they had welcomed their own babies. The ranch passed to Sam's management, though Nathan remained involved and interested until his health no longer permitted it. On a spring morning in 1908, Nathan Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75. Grace held his hand as he took his last breath, her heart breaking even as she thanked God for the 31 years they had shared. He had lived a full life, seen his children and grandchildren thrive, and died knowing he was deeply loved. She buried him in the cottonwood grove next to his first wife, and at the funeral, she spoke about the man who had saved her and let her save him in return. She told the gathered crowd about a rancher who had promised to cherish her, and how he had kept that promise every single day until his last. Grace lived another 12 years, surrounded by her loving family, an active and valued matriarch. She never remarried, telling her children that she had been blessed with a great love and did not need to search for it again. She filled her days with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on the stories of her life, making sure they understood the lessons she had learned. When Grace herself passed away in 1920 at the age of 66, she was buried between Nathan and Catherine in the grove she had tended for so many years. Her children gathered at the graveside, remembering a woman of strength and grace who had turned betrayal into blessing, who had built a life of purpose from the ruins of broken promises. The Quinn Ranch continued for generations after, always remembered as the place where two broken people had found healing in each other's arms, where a woman who had been used had instead been cherished, where a man who thought he would never love again had found his heart renewed, where love had proven itself stronger than loss, more enduring than grief, capable of transforming everything it touched. And on quiet evenings when the wind whistled through the cottonwoods, old-timers swore you could still feel it, that love that had built the Quinn legacy. The kind of love that promises cherishing and delivers it faithfully. The kind that turns a desperate woman stepping off a stage into a beloved wife and mother. The kind that takes a lonely rancher and gives him back his life. The kind that lasts not just a lifetime, but for all the generations that follow. A testament to what is possible when two hearts choose each other and refuse to let go.